Good afternoon. Today we started on a project that's been in the works for a while. We had the pad kind of set already, ready to go, but we hadn't really had the opportunity to get anything going. It's going to be like a tool shed, lawnmowers, weed eaters, things like that. So we got the pad. We just started the floor, joists, that kind of thing. We should have the floor set by tomorrow. And as we continue to work on the project, we'll keep you updated. All right, it's been about an hour. You can see we got the floor all framed in, ready for the flooring to go on top, the sheeting for the flooring. We'll get that put in tomorrow morning, and then at that point, the project will be on hold again. I've got to go to work. I'll be gone about a week when I get back. Good morning. We're back at it this morning. We're going to get this flooring put down and start marking out the walls, see what we're going to need for doors, windows, things like that. Sorry for the lighting, it's a little bright out here today. All right, you can see we got the plywood down for the floor. As I said earlier, this is about as far as I'm going to be able to go. Tomorrow I have to leave to go to work. I'll be at work somewhere between 4 and 6 days. Then I'll be home for about a week. When I get back, we'll get the walls framed up and start moving forward again.
Hi, I'm Tracy, and this is Working Man's Revolution. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Good afternoon.
Good morning. The last time we spoke is I was working on the shed project. I had to leave for work. I've since gone. We drilled the well, completed it, and since then I've come home. This morning I'm about to start working on the trusses. I'm going to pull out a few 2x4s here of this bunk, and I'm going to start cutting some of the angles. Once I have those cut, I'm going to lay them out to ensure that all the angles are correct. If they're correct, I'm going to build a jig, and from there I can start mass producing these trusses. You can see the bunks behind me. I'll pull out a few 2x4s from there. We'll start cutting some angles and get moving. For the shed, we want to build gambrel trusses, also known as barn-style trusses. With that, I searched and found a good site that gives you the exact dimensions. You enter the data that you need, width and height and angle you plan on using, and this calculator will give you all of the cuts, the exact angles, lengths, and everything you need to build these type trusses. The website is concalculator.com. That is CONCALCULATOR.com. I'm going to start cutting some of these and making sure that I have my angles exact. From there, we'll start laying and start building our jig. From the website, not only does it give me the exact angle that is required, it also gives me the dimensions so that I can mark a straight line and then measure over the exact distance that's required and then create my angle. And that way I can verify that the angle on the saw is exactly what I need on the 2x4. Now with that, I've verified that the angle is correct. What I'll do is I'll go through and I'll start making a couple more cuts. I need to get at least 2 sets of everything because they're exactly the same on both sides, obviously. But I will cut enough so that I can create my jig. I've got all my pieces cut. I'm going to go out and I'm going to lay them out and ensure all the angles are correct. If they're correct, we'll create a jig. First thing we're going to do to start setting up these trusses, I'm going to square up a couple of scrap 2x4s. I'm going to square those with the floor. That'll just help us in the long run as far as getting established and setting up the truss because we're not screwing it together at first. We're just going to ensure everything fits properly. So I'm going to screw these down and then we'll start laying out the truss. Okay, what you can see now is I've made all the cuts as I'd said earlier. I laid out some of the specific dimensions on the floor that I'm using here. We marked center right here. Additionally, marked center at the top, and then measured up to the top of what would be the top of the truss. Put some marks down. Did the same thing on the corners here where they all meet. And then laid out the boards so that everything lines up just right. Now that it's lined up, I will put down some other 2x4s to hold everything in place, and then from there we can just start cutting these and laying them out and fastening them together. It got too windy outside for me to show you the jig. You wouldn't have been able to hear me talk with all the wind going. So what I've decided to do is come in the barn here, and I'm going to start cutting the gussets. I plan on making the gussets 16 inches wide. That way I can get 3 gussets out of each row that I cut here. I'm going to need at least 3 gussets per truss. So I'm going to start cutting gussets, and I'll show you the next step as we get there. My goodness. After cutting all the gusset material to the correct width, now I need to cut them to the correct length, which is 16 inches, again, as I said earlier. What I've done is I've fixed the block, used the clamp there you can see, so that it's set right at 16 inches. Now I'll just use the miter saw, run them through real quick, and cut them all to the same length as 16 inches. After cutting all the gusset material to the correct height, then cutting it all to the correct length, I adjusted the angle of my miter saw so that I can cut the corners on it so that they will line up in the truss and fit the corners properly. Now with the jig completely built and all the gussets built, I took one piece of the lower truss and I set it here to verify that the angle is correct on the miter saw. And because the pieces are, those lower pieces are going to be just under 38 inches, I set a block and locked it here at 40 inches. Now I can cut all the 2x4s at the correct angle on the one side, and that part will be done. Because the angle that I've got set is correct, when I make the one cut this direction, it works out to be the exact same angle on the opposite side of the board. You can see they line up perfectly. So I only need to make one cut on the 10 2x4s, and that angle will already be finished. Following the same procedure, I got the long upright truss. I'm using it to ensure that I have the angle correct. Now that I've got the angle correct, I will cut the first angle on all of the upper trusses. Okay, after making all of the cuts, I've laid everything out so that all of the angles are set to just fall into the jig. That way I don't have to try on each one to figure out which end is which or which angle goes where. I've got them all laid out so they'll just fit right into the jig. I've got all the gussets laid out right where they're going to need to go. I've got this first one in the jig here. I've already fastened it. We're going to use liquid nails, extremely heavy duty. And what we're going to start doing is laying out these trusses into the jig and fastening down the gussets. Once we get that, we'll flip them over and we'll do the second side. Shouldn't take all that long, but it's a lot of stuff on your hands and knees crawling around. So you may ask, you may wonder why I did the trusses before the walls. I did the trusses before the walls simply because I have a good flat surface to work on with it like this. Once the trusses are done, then I can move them out of the way, then I can set the walls up. Otherwise, I don't have a good flat surface to work on, so that's the reason I did the trusses before the walls. All right, time to get busy. we got the trusses complete. Now I've got to go back to work. I'll be gone about a week. When I get back, we'll get started on the walls. I'll make that a part 2. This video is getting a little long, so I'll create a second part and we'll continue on from there.